Alright, welcome to the ultimate fire staff guide for corrupted dungeons. This is the only video that you will need to watch to learn everything that you need to know to dominate players in Stalker corrupted dungeons using the fire staff. In this video, we're going to talk about the build. We're actually going to talk about three builds. A super cheap build, the mid-tier build, and the meta build that I am currently using with around 90% win rate. In this video, I'm also going to discuss all of the skills that you need to use against specific enemies. I'm actually going to have like the explanation of each fight with most of the meta weapons that you can face in Stalker corrupted dungeons. Don't worry, I will cut this down or split this into chapters, so if you need to find something very specific, you can just click on the chapters and just watch that specific part of the video. So first off, we're going to start with the build, and I'm going to focus on PvE and PvP. So the build itself, you do need a tier 6 fire staff. This is a must. This is the minimum that you need because you want to get access to the Searing Flame, which is one of the best Q abilities that you can use. Actually, the best Q ability that you can use in most of the situations that you are going to find yourself in Stalker corrupted dungeons. With the PvP skills, I am going to discuss in separate clips or in separate sections of this video with detailed explanations. So for PvE, these are the skills that I use. I use the Burning Field because it has AoE, has good damage against mobs, and it just leaves a trail of Burning Field that you can use to deal a lot of damage. I purposely use Flame Blast for this. This is actually best for the boss. This is also good for clearing mobs as well. The most ideal W ability, I would say, for clearing mobs is the Fire Wave, but against bosses, you want to switch to Flame Blast. And I'm just lazy. I don't want to switch between Flame Blast and Fire Wave when I'm switching from mobs to boss, boss to mobs. So I just pretty much default to Flame Blast, and it's been working well. Obviously, the star of the show is the Fire Blast, which is a targeted ability that has different cast times. So the longer you cast this skill, the higher the damage, maximum of 1.2 seconds full cast. And if you do use the full cast of this Fire Staff E, you are going to knock back all enemies for 3.79 meters. It also has a pretty good cooldown, 15-second base. For PvE, again, still I use the Burn passive because it gives me additional damage per normal attack. For the offhand, for the cheapest build, this build actually costs 98,000 silver, which is pretty cheap. You're going to use the Eye of Secrets. The Eye of Secrets gives you max energy and energy regeneration. This is actually perfect because you don't need a Limher Scape. If you are using an Eye of Secret, you can forgo the Limher Scape and use a regular cape because you're not really going to run out of mana because of the additional max energy and additional energy regeneration on your offhand. For the helmet, I use Hunter Hood. Obviously for PvE, I use energy regain so that you can regain more energy even while in combat actually. And I use the Balanced Mind passive for extra damage and extra defenses. For the chest piece, I use the Cleric Robe. For PvE, again, it's Mend Wounds. It does heal you 6% per 1 second. It also gives you max 5% of your max energy as well. And I use the Aggression passive for 8% more damage. For the boots, you can actually go with any plate boots with the Rejuvenating Sprint, which gives you 80% speed, and it gives you 141 health over 5 seconds. You can switch to any plate boots that you want as long as you use a Rejuvenating Sprint. I just really like the Guardian boots because it gives me the opportunity to switch to the Giant ability, which increases your current health by 100%, movement speed by 25% for 8 seconds. This is great if your opponent also has the Giant ability switched on because you are going to most likely have the damage advantage against most of the Stalker dungeon builds that you are going to face. For this one, I am using the Toughness for extra defensives. For food, I am using the Pork Omelet. If you're going for like a very cheap build, a pork omelet flat 7.0 is more than enough. It increases your cast speed and cooldown rate by 13.5 seconds, which is, you know, good enough for a cheap build. Or for potion, I am actually going to use the healing potion. Even if you are using it for like a cheap build, I would actually recommend spending more on the healing potion and getting actually the tier 6. If you don't have a lot of silver, obviously you can just go with like tier 4.1, but I highly recommend going for tier 6. All right, so that is the entire build for PvE. For all of the 3 builds that I have today, it's going to be the same. We're just going to change the cape, the offhand, and the food. That's all that we're going to change for this build. So all on the right side. Everything from the middle and the left side is going to stay the same. We're still going to use the Fire Staff, the Hunter Hood, Cleric Robe, and Guardian Boots. For PvE, again, this is going to stay the same throughout all of these 3 builds because we're only going to change offhands and capes, and you don't really have swaps for those. When inspecting your enemy, when you get invaded or you get transferred to another corrupted dungeons, this is the base build that you want. You want the Q3, the Searing Flame, again, the best Q ability that you can use for this build because it has longer range, it has insane amount of damage. It deals 326 for the first 3 Searing Flames. If you actually hit all 3 within like the span of 5 seconds between hits, you are going to activate Furious Flame, which is the 4th Q3 skill of this Fire Staff. It deals 629 damage with 145 damage over time. Comparing that to the quick cast ability damage, the Pyroblast, your E ability, your biggest damage at quick cast, it can deal, the 4th Furious Flame can deal more damage. So basically, you can treat your 4th Furious Flame as a quick cast ability, similar to the damage that it can deal. Obviously, this is a skill shot, and this is a targeted skill. This is how Searing Flame works. And your Pyroblast needs target. And when you are using Q3, you want to use the 4th passive because it does give you an additional 10% for 4 seconds every 5 spell casts. There's this one thing about the Fire Staff that you need to understand. You need to have synergy between your Q and your passive. If you're using Q2, as I showed you earlier for PvE, you want to go with Burn passive because this has longer cooldown, meaning you are going to have time to actually deal normal attack, and 82 damage over 2.5 seconds can be significant, especially in PvE. Whenever you're using Q1, you always want to go aggressive caster. This is known as the turret build or the turret skill. When you have the Q1, which deals 204 damage, and literally has 0 cooldown. It has a cast time. So you are just going to pelt people with your Q. You need the aggressive caster because after casting 4 spells, your cast time is going to increase by 40%. So you can just keep on using your Q ability a lot faster. Don't worry, I'm going to pretty much give you concrete examples on when you use Q1, Q2, Q3, or any of the W abilities later in this video. Again, for PvP, you want to use Retaliate on your Hunter Hood, still staying with the balanced mind. Retaliate on your Hunter Hood, which gives you increased damage resistances by 56 for 4 seconds. And more importantly, it actually reflects 85% of the incoming damage as magical damage. You can use this best to prevent your enemy from attacking you, because if they do, they're just going to get reflected and that's going to sting. For the Cleric Robe, obviously you want to go with the Everlasting Sprint, which invokes a magical ward that lasts 1.5 seconds. If you get hit or take damage within that 1.5 seconds, it activates the Everlasting Spirit and makes you immune to further damage for 3 seconds and increases your damage for heal cast. This is perfect. When you activate this successfully, you can use it with the Pyroblast. It gives you basically immunity and increased damage. And since the Pyroblast is an auto-targeted skill, you can pretty much guarantee high damage with this combination. We already talked about the Guardian Boots. It's going to be the same. It's going to be Rejuvenating Sprint and the Toughness passive. That is the cheap set. That is like the very, very cheap set. You can use it for 94k. Actually, if you buy order some of these in the market, you are going to save a lot more. This is my meta build right now. It uses the Taproot, which increases your health by 346. This is the only thing that is actually significant when it comes to PvP, adding 346 to your health. Now, this is relatively expensive. It costs estimated. It has an estimated value of 128,000, so it is very expensive, especially for new players. You also have your Limher Escape, estimated value of 65,000. You don't need to go like 4142. Just go with the normal tier 4.0 Limher Escape because it doesn't really give you a lot of benefits. In a Stalker Corrupted Dungeon fight, it's rare to use your Limher Escape twice if you use your skills properly. And upgrading to like 4243 gives you like 1 or 2 seconds less in the cooldown. So it's not really worth it. So I do suggest using the Limher Escape just 4.0. Also, upgrade your food to 0.1. I know some players, especially those who are trying to save silver, don't want to use 0.1 food. But honestly, getting that extra 1.5% cast speed and cooldown rate, it has a lot of effects when it comes to using your skills in the long run with like multiple uses. So if you have the money, do use the pork omelets tier 7.1. So the idea here is that I have more health, I have good cooldowns and good cast speed, and I won't run out of mana because I have the Limher Escape. Okay, so one of good point there by Cake. There is no cap. There is no cap for food because Stalker Corrupted Dungeons have that soft cap. Food is not part of that cap. So if it says 50% cooldown, it does mean 15% cooldown, even if your IP is squished. Okay, so again, the concept of this meta build is no problem with the mana because of the energy reserve on the Limher Escape. A lot of health, extra health with the Taproot, and some cooldowns for the food. Now we can sort of replicate that by switching the offhand and the food. So this food right here and this offhand right here sort of does the same thing, but for much less cost. Let's look at the cost here. The meta build costs 297k. But if we use these substitutes, it is going to be halved to 162,000. Okay, 162,000 for that compared to around 300k. It has almost the same stats, almost, with one key feature that is missing. So the cooldown modifier for the Mist Caller is at 12%. Obviously, it is going to be squished in Stalker Corrupted Dungeons, so you are sacrificing some cooldowns. Obviously, you can go with like 4-2 as well because it's insanely cheap. You can even go 4-3 or 5-2 if you can afford that, to make it so that you get 15% cooldown rate as well. But again, this is like insanely cheap at 10,000. Instead of using a Taproot that costs 128k, you can use a Beef Sandwich. The Beef Sandwich increases your max health by 13.5%. All right, it increases your max health by 13.5%, almost similar to how the Taproot actually works. So this increases your health. This actually reduces your heal received bonus, but this doesn't. All right, so the only real difference here is the cast time. You can get the cooldown by using Mist Caller. You can get the health by using the Beef Sandwich, but you can never really get the cast speed. Thankfully though, with this build, if you are using these abilities, and most of the time you're just using Q3, the cast speed doesn't really matter that much. This is perfect. The cast speed or cast time for this skill is 0.3. Probably going to show an arrow there. 0.3 seconds for the first 3 and 0.4 seconds for the 4th Furious passive. If you have that 0.1 food, it actually gets reduced to like 0.26. So you're looking at 0.04 seconds in terms of the difference in the cast time. Is that noticeable? I doubt it. I really, really doubt it. Especially when you're used to this. But it is good to have that extra cast speed. Okay, it's just a matter of like preference. Do you want to use a more expensive 300k set to get that 1.5, or to get that 15 seconds more cast time, or do you want to save around 150,000 silver, forego the cast speed or cast time, and still get almost the same stats? So that is the concept of this build. We have the very, very cheap at like 90k. You can upgrade your Limmerscape Mistcaller Beef Sandwich to 162k. Or you can go with the full meta and use 297k. So now that you know what you need for the items and equipment, we are going to move on to specific fights. Check the chapters of this video and you will see a fight and then an explanation next to it. A detailed explanation on what I did to win that specific fight and how to counter their specific skills with my skills as well. In this video, I'm going to show you how to beat the top 10 meta builds in Stalker Corrupted Dungeon. But if you have a build that you're struggling with and you want to know how to beat them properly, let me know in the comment section below. Nice. Ooh, dang, that was close. Holy crap, that was close. The regular is the Hunter Hood, which I think against Fire Staffs is better than the Purge. But this guy was actually really good in terms of using his abilities. Okay, so the strategy here is to be accurate with your Qs and quick cast your skills. I'm using the Fire Artillery here, and I'll show you why a little bit later. Okay, so the strategy here for me was quick casts. Everything has to be quick cast. I quick cast my E ability because I know he has the multi-shot. The multi-shot is one of the strongest skills of a bow because it can cancel channeling times or channeling skills. My E ability is a channeling skill. Well, everything. My W ability is a channeling skill. My Q ability has cast time. So he can pretty much like cancel my big damages. Okay. He popped his E really, really early, which is the right thing to do. I countered that with my Hunter Hood. That prevents him from attacking. Okay. This is actually something that surprised me here. He turned right after my Hunter Hood was up. I really thought he was going to run away. Here's what I did. Baited my... I knew he had his Fiend Cowl. So I baited my Cleric Robe here for him to use his Purge. And he actually used his Purge. And I was able to hit him with my big Q. The reason why I wanted to bait him with that is because I have my Furious Flame, which is the 4th Q ability of the Fire Staff. I wanted him to stand still so I can cast my Q ability. It deals 327 damage after resistances. 1 Q ability, dude. 1 Q ability dealt 327 initial damage, plus it has burn damage as well. Okay, so that was a good exchanged for me. So I continued using my Q ability. Now I use my artillery here because I think he just recently used this Q. So he didn't have the Q readily available, right? There you go. He used his Q ability. That prompted me to use my fire artillery. Now, I know that has a low cooldown, but look at that. I was able to pretty much use 2/3 of my skill. He used that artillery. He used that Q ability. He stayed in the artillery enough for him to get that third stack. That third stack, or these fire artillery stacks, is actually the ones that deal significant damage, not the fireball ones. It was using still Gigantify Potion over here. Now at this point, I already know he was about to die. I have my E ability. I actually just pressed my E ability here, not pressing any other buttons. But he actually negated that with the run. So this is the thing that you need to be careful about with your Q abilities. It can be dodged with the run, okay? At this point, since he was not yet dead, I was not certain anymore if I'm able to kill him. So he used this mercenary jacket, which is really good, right into a lot of like fast E's. I just tried to be as accurate as possible here because he has basically turned the tide here. I just wanted to be as accurate as possible with my Q abilities. I knew I had my Hunter Hood, right? But here's the thing. I knew I had my Hunter Hood, quick cast that Q ability. He's really low. I thought I was going to use my Hunter Hood and just he's going to smack himself. I forgot about his Fiend Cowl. So one of the things that you need to do is be aware of your enemy's abilities. So I popped Hunter Hood. I actually forgot. I was just trying to maintain distance here. He purged my Hunter Hood. He was really, really low. I was actually accurate enough with my Q abilities. Right there. He died kind of off screen. I was accurate enough with my Q abilities. And the dots from the Q ability actually killed them off. It was a little too close. But we got the win. So just be aware of their skills and their cooldowns. When this happens, I pretty much just lose. Literally ran out of mana. 700k. I literally ran out of energy in the middle of the fight. I was like, at that end of the fight, I was like, yeah, this is easy. I'm going to get him. Like, I'm pressing Q and like nothing is happening. I was trying to press E and it was like nothing is happening. I literally ran out of mana, dude. Start with the first fight here. So as usual, you start off with your Q abilities. He used his E right away over here. So I used my... Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing that I want to explain. He used this W. He used this E. I used my W to create some separation. And usually during this time, I use my E already. Okay? Look at this. I quick cast my E to counter his parry. But he was still quick enough, dude. He was still quick enough to use his parry, reflect all of the damages to me while he received 0 damages. So as Silly said in the chat, the longer distance that you have from your opponent, it's easier for them to use their reflect, in this case, the parry. So it actually reflected my entire thing. He has insane reflexes here. Very insane reflexes. So what I learned from that is use the skill, really use the quick cast skill as close to the opponent as possible. So I'm just going to skip through this, or maybe show you a little bit. He used this E, I used my Hunter Hood to reflect. He actually used his Gigantify here. He used this Gigantify potion. Now, I know if he has Gigantify potion, I cannot use Firewall to create separation because using Gigantify potion immunes you from force movements. So what I did was to just run. I just ran and waited for his Gigantify potion to be done and started my engage as well. Missed my Firewall there, but it's more than enough. If you notice there as well, I actually quick casted my E really, really quickly, right? If you blink, you can actually miss it. I quick casted my E and he started running away and he was able to run away to reset. Now, this is the second engage. This is the second engage. He did not change any skills. He used this E. I used my Firewall. Tag him with a Q. Quick casted my E. Really, really quick. Really, really quick. And hopefully untelegraphed because he did take damage. He did take damage and I did not get reflected. So I learned my lesson from the last engage. I just quick casted. Although that was still is a pretty long distance, that's more than enough for me to deal damage without taking damage. So here's the mistake that he did. I used my boots. He used his boots, but he went towards me. He actually did not try to create some separation. So I used my Hunter Hood right away, not to reflect his big damages, but to actually discourage him from attacking because we have similar health. Okay? And I'm here just spamming Qs, trying to hit him. He used his E ability again, used Firewall. He doesn't have Gigantify potion anymore because it's still on cooldown, I believe. And he mistimed, actually. He mistimed this parry there. He mistimed this parry. So I full casted my E. When I saw him use his parry and he missed everything, sort of quick cast my E. Mid cast, I would say. Mid cast my E. And that's pretty much it. I know I can mid cast my E or full cast, close to full cast my E because he doesn't have any reflex. And that's pretty much it. I have almost 80% health. He has like 20%. Although he had, look at that. He actually had Mercenary Jacket and I almost lost here. Be careful when they have Mercenary Jackets. I ran out of energy. I literally ran out of energy. He almost killed me here. But obviously, just keep on using your Q abilities. You have more damage against them anyways. There you go. Easy 700k. He almost killed me in the end, though. Don't jump scare me, please. Where's your Hunter Hood? Bro! This guy just killed himself. Dude! Where was your Hunt? What? Alright, so this is against... This guy doesn't have the highest tier or the best setup out there, but when you are dealing against Curse Skulls and they are using the Vile Curse, which is their Q1, you actually want to switch to your Q1 as well, Q4, and of course the third passive for the quick cast. Right there. This is the skill. These are the skills that you want because you want to counter their sort of like burst or brawly type playstyle. Now in this specific fight, the player is really not that experienced when it comes to dealing with fire. But the first thing that you want to do is always Q spam. That is the first thing that you want to do against these kinds of playstyles with the Q1 on the Curse Skull. Just keep on Q spamming. I'm actually just waiting for him to use his Hunter Hood here. But as soon as he used it really, really late, which is so bad, But as soon as they use their Hunter Hood, pop your Cleric Robe and continue Q spamming. At this point, because they didn't use their Hunter Hood early and they waited, I was able to counter most of their damages here. And looking back at it, I only used Qs and 1W. I did not even use my Hunter Hood, did not use my boots, did not use my E, just because this player was so late at using his Hunter Hood. But if you're looking for a bit more comprehensive tutorial on this specific playstyle against Cursed Skulls, I will leave a video link in the description. It is the old E ability of the one-hand fire staff, but every single thing that I said there is still true. The only thing that is different is that your E now is auto-targeted, which makes it a lot easier for you to deal more damage. Hunter Hood. Oh, he disappeared! He disappeared! What yan? It's all been done before. You could only let it be. I like you the way you are. Oh, whoa! GG, sir. 400k. All right, now against a CHILLHOWL, which is probably one of the trickiest builds to counter with the fire staff, just because they have that cultist robe, they have that freezing E, which is easy to counter, but if your opponent is really experienced, it might be more difficult than expected. Again, this is not like the best player out there, but it's still enough for me to give you guys some sort of explanation on how you can counter this specific build. All right, against a CHILLHOWL, you want to switch to Q3 and W5. And the most important thing to note here is that your Q ability has much longer range than their Q ability. So you can stay outside of their damage zone while dealing your own damage. It is relatively easy to pretty much dodge these attacks because you just need to move side to side. And if you noticed earlier, I actually used my Q3, I actually used my quick cast on the E right here. There you go. That quick cast E deals 379 damage. And it is, again, using the quick cast on the E ability is not telegraphed. So it is relatively difficult to counter that quick cast E. So if you have the opportunity to trade shots with the Frost Staff, start your engage with just Qs and then try to sneak that quick cast E to deal more damage. So at this point, I was just dealing much more damage. And this is something that I have practiced for I wouldn't say for a very long time, but I've noticed that if you time their skills when they're using their skills, knowing that your Q ability deals more damage than their Q ability, you actually get better trade-off. So if you actually time their casting, right? If you try to time as soon as they cast, you cast yourself, you are going to deal significantly more damage. So try to time when you think they're going to cast their skill so that you can cast your skill as well, because there's a stand time. There's a stand time when they cast their ability, and since you have longer range on your Q, you can reach them, and at the same time, you can also dodge their skills. So at this point, it's pretty much GG. I already activated my Hunter Hood here because that will pretty much discourage him from attacking me at this point. Use my boots and into a quick cast E that was relatively quick, relatively easy. But I have one more here to show you. All right, so this is another fight against a CHILLHOWL with a significantly higher tier equipment here. Now, this is weird because he was using Frost Bomb. He's using every single thing that is the meta currently, but he's using the Frost Bomb instead of the Frost Nova, which is kind of weird. So the strategy here is still very similar, but I want to show you one thing. One thing in particular in this fight. Again, I'm using the same strategy, using my artillery while they're running away or while they're chasing me down, using the quick cast ability on your E's and taking full advantage of the high damage on the Searing Flame, which is the Q3 ability of the Fire Staff. I'm just keeping enough distance here and quick casting my E whenever it is possible. Now, you have to be really careful when you are just chasing your opponent down, because when you're chasing, their Q ability sort of has extended range because you're going towards it. So you can't really reach them. They can't reach you just because you are moving towards them. One of the things that I usually do when that happens is use my artillery. They have two choices here: to either just run away or to move forward to try to use their E ability. And at this time, he chose to move forward, be aggressive, which it is understandable because we have similar health. But as soon as they use their E ability, cancel everything and use your Hunter Hood immediately. As soon as you see that frozen ground, right? As soon as you see that, there you go. Use your Hunter Hood right away, because that pretty much reflects all of the damage back to them, and you can pretty much kill them right away. You want to reflect their E ability so that it deals more damage to them. You take less damage, plus it gives you the opportunity to counter as soon as that ice explodes. Ooh. Alright, let's do this. GG, sir. Alright, so this fight is against a Fire Staff. Now, this is not a build that you really need to worry about, truly worry about when you're using my build. Because I know he's using tier 5 or anything less than tier 6. He doesn't have the Q3 ability. And he's using a Tomo spell. So that means he is pretty much an Ooga Booga Fire Staff. An Ooga Booga Fire Staff is a Fire Staff user that uses Q1 and relies heavily on being a turret. And you can counter that by using the Fire Wave. And counter that by using the Fire Wave. So switch your W skill to a Fire Wave. And that's pretty much it. Also, you don't want to use artillery during this fight. I know in some of the tips that I said, you want to use artillery against range by default, but this is one of those times where you don't want to actually use a fire artillery, because using a fire artillery means you're going to stay in one position and the Ooga Booga Fire Staff can actually just spam Q and you're going to lose that engage. So it's best to go with Fire Wave in this situation, because you can cancel their casting. Okay, going into the fight, I know I have the range advantage. That's the main advantage that I have. He's using Q1, I'm using Q3, I have the range advantage. So I just tag him. He actually used, he did really well here by using the Pyroblast right away. I made a mistake of actually using Cleric Robe instead of Hunter Hood, but it worked out in my favor. Almost, I think. Because right there, I actually received 0 damage. This was just lucky. This was just lucky because I used my Q ability. He had his Hunter Hood on. So my dot damage from the Q ability is actually getting reflected. As soon as I used my Cleric Robe, that reflects damage triggered or activated my Cleric Robe, and I actually took 0 damage. Took 0 damage from that full cast E, but the correct strategy when you see a Fire Staff using their full cast E is use your Hunter Hood. This worked out in my favor. As always, I popped my Cleric Robe, activated it, and into a full cast E, took out 742 health with 1 skill. So as soon as you pop your Cleric Robe, use your full cast E, and at this point, I was just trying to get away from the Q spam, so keeping my distance, especially when he has his Cleric Robe on. So I just kept my distance, popped my Hunter Hood because he was trying to Q spam, canceled one of his Qs, and that's it. So it's pretty easy. Obviously, he's not geared. He has a very low IP, but he could have still killed me if I was not careful when to use my Cleric Robe, when to use my Hunter Hood, and what skills to cancel. Oh no, he died. GG, sir. So this is your typical meta Battle Axe build, except probably for the offhand and for the cape. The cape, it's usually the Thetford cape, and for the offhand, it's usually the Moisak. But this is essentially like the build against with Battle Axe, or even a swap to a Mercenary Jacket. Okay, so here's how you deal with, or here's how you win against Battle Axes. With my skills, you want to use Q3, your W, Firewall, and obviously Pyroblast. Here's the strategy against this. It's very easy. So obviously you start with your Q abilities. Just try to be accurate. As soon as they use their boost and they start coming towards you, use your Firewall right away. Using your Firewall, they don't have anything that can go through the Firewall. So they're stuck on the other end. And again, just stay behind your Firewall. Keep using your Q abilities. And as soon as the Firewall ends and they have the opportunity to actually kill you, pop your Hunter Hood right away. Go inside their space, pop their Hunter Hood, try to disguise that. Try to disguise the Hunter Hood. Once they're popped their own Hunter Hood, use your Cleric Robe and transition into a full cast Pyroblast. And boom, they're going to be mostly dead after this. I kind of trolled a little bit here because I had 80% more 80% health. He had like 10% health. I kind of toyed with my food in this one. But at this point, you just use your Q abilities, use Firewall when they get close, and that's it. I kind of toyed with him here a little bit. He used his assassin jacket. But if you look here, I actually hit him. I did hit him while he was invis, and he died. So it's a very easy matchup, Battle Axe versus One Hand Fire. Really, really easy. Just don't play with your food, and you're going to win really easily. Alright, now against a Cursed Staff user with Sickle and Armor Piercer. Whenever you are faced against Cursed Staffs using the Sickle, you actually want to switch away from your Q1 and switch to your Q3 ability and your Artillery. This gives you longer range compared to the Q1 spam. Normally, Cursed Staffs, when they have Vile Curse, which is their Q1, you want to counter it with your Q1 as well with the Firebolt. But if they're using Sickle, you want to counter it with your Q3 ability and the W5 ability. Alright, so at the start of the fight here, you always want to start with your fire artillery because you have that range advantage. In this case, he kind of made a mistake running into the fire artillery and actually standing on top of the fire artillery, giving me 4 stacks of damage on that skill, which is something that you don't want to get when you're going against another fire staff. Even with that skill alone, it took out so much of his health to a point where I was feeling a lot confident going into this engage. As soon as I saw him actually being truly aggressive here, I popped my Cleric Robe right away into a full cast of the E. And boom, that took out pretty much 80% of his health. And at this point, I still have 90%. I was pretty much confident that I was going to win this fight. I actually missed my Q3 ability, which worked out in my favor because he was using his Cleric Robe. So his Cleric Robe did not pop. I used my Hunter Hood just to finish him off actually here, because I'm not really worried about any of these attacks, and that was a relatively easy win. But if you are looking for another in-depth tutorial about this specific weapon against the one-hand curse, how you can dodge roll how you can dodge roll their E ability, I will again leave a link in the description below, because in that video I did went play by play, frame by frame on how you can actually dodge their E ability with your dodge. Let me just show you this ability right here. This ability alone in any boots, any shoes, any sandals can actually save you from the one-hand curse E and will negate all of their damages. Bro, I was waiting for heals. Gee, 1 mil? Holy crap. So if you can try to not get hit by the Magmasphere, that's the best option. That's why I changed to Fire Wave instead of Fire Artillery. Remember in the previous matches, I've said if you're against range, most of the time you want to go with Fire Artillery. In this case, you needed to go to Fire Wave. You needed to go with Fire Wave because you have 2 skills that you can cancel with your Fire Wave. First is their Cultist Robe or their Artillery. If you're taking way too much damage, you can take out their Artillery, or if they're healing right in front of you, you can just cancel their heals with a Fire Wave. Now he switched to a Giant, to the Giant ability on his boots. So in this case, I had kind of like the range advantage and the mobility advantage as well. More on the mobility because he doesn't have a way to like run away from me. But at the same time, this was a good play because he had Gigantify and he had Cultist Robe. So he can sort of like switch, swap between the two. The strategy here is fairly complicated. Okay. So you always want to start with your Q ability, always, right? Right here. Guys, you always want to start with your Q ability. Obviously, we both have Q3, and we were just not within the reach of each other. So what I tried to do here was to quick cast my E, because I knew he would try to use his Q again. So instead of using my Q, I used my E ability. So that gave me an initial health advantage. And look at this. I was still tagging him with my Q. He used Artillery. All right. I did not use anything yet. As soon as that first ball hit, and that first puddle hit, I used my Hunter Hood. Not before. So while they're casting their Artillery, you don't want to use your Hunter Hood right away. If you are going to use your Hunter Hood, use it as soon as the first one hits because it will maximize your reflect damages. He was able to full cast his E or his W. I used my Fire Wave, but look at that. I still have like 2 seconds of reflect. 2 seconds of reflect, and that took out most of his health. Only a handful of Qs. Look at this. A handful of Qs, he has like 80%. Just keep tagging him with Q, with the reflect on it, and with the Fire Wave, it pretty much took out 60% of his health. Plus, I had around 70% on my own. Okay, he used his Hunter Hood. I used my boots over here. He telegraphed his Magma Sphere, and as I said, you always want to not get hit by the Magma Sphere. Obviously, easy counter there by just walking around it. And at this point, I wanted to use my Cleric Robe because look at this. He actually popped his Hunter Hood, right? He had his Hunter Hood up. And I just wanted to activate my own Cleric Robe while his Hunter Hood is up. So I popped my Cleric Robe just to trigger my Cleric Robe really, really easily. And I just pelted them with some Qs, this with Qs, and a full cast E. Now, at this point, it will come down to just who is more accurate than their Q abilities. All right, just pop that, pop that. Look at that. Even while he is using artillery, I just kept on moving away and using my Q ability. Move away, use your Q ability, and obviously try to cancel it as fast as you can. Because artillery, although is very strong, doesn't really provide high DPS. So I know I can out damage him, even if we have almost the same amount of health over here. Almost the same amount of health, right? He used this artillery. I knew I can out damage him just because I can Q. And I had my W up, and then boom, and it's all she wrote. Artillery is really good, but it's not the best when it comes to just pure damage because the damage comes afterwards. So if you're just trading shots, it is a lot better to use your Q ability than just trading Ws. And that's pretty much it. And I got 1 mil for that. Relatively easy fight, but what made it easy is because I knew when to use my skills, and hopefully you can learn from that as well. Interesting they used that. Oh shoot, that's right. I may be in trouble here because I don't have cape. Oh no! He actually reset. What the heck? Bro, that mob just blocks my freaking E. Bruh. How could that mob do that to me? GG, sir! GG! 700k? Bro, I'm loving this! Okay, fire artillery here. As always, you want to start your engage with your Q. But in this case, I made a mistake. I made a mistake of actually using the artillery right away. And when they use their Badon E, your best bet is to use your Hunter Hood or your cleric robe. You always want to pretty much counter their Badon E, because if you don't, it's going to be a long night for you. Okay, so here's what I did. I chose the Hunter Hood for this specific fight. And the thing that he did, and most players, or some players that may not be well experienced with this, uses their Mistwalker jacket. This was like the worst thing that he could have done, because my Hunter Hood was already done, almost done, and he just used a long cooldown skill, which could have saved them in the latter, like, which could have saved them later in this fight. So when they use their Mistwalker jacket, literally just maintain distance. You don't want to chase. You don't want to be like within striking distance when they have that Mistwalker jacket. So at this point, all you got to do is to, well, at least to me, I used my full cast, which now that I'm thinking about it, I was lucky here. I was actually really lucky. He used this Hunter Hood when I used my artillery, so I just canceled it right away and walked away. Literally walk away. Wait for that Hunter Hood to be up. All right. And at this point, I know he doesn't have the Mistwalker jacket and he doesn't have Hunter Hood. So I had, I don't know, an open way to pretty much attack him whenever I want to. But I keep on forgetting, and this is something that you have to almost constantly remind yourself, that when you're going against a bow using multi-shot, that they actually have multi-shot. I just keep on forgetting that they can cancel most of my skills. Again, he used this E over here. I countered it with my cleric robe. So you just have to counter these specific the specific skill, like the E of the Badon. You have to counter it with either the Hunter Hood or the cleric robe, because if you don't, it's going to deal a lot of damage. So in this case, I was actually trying to quick cast my E, but it got absorbed by this freaking mob over here. So it prompted me to run away. Okay, as I was trying to soft reset here, he used this boots to get near me, and since I know I have longer range with my Q abilities, I actually started using Q. Pelted them with 3, plus the quick cast of the Pyroblast, but he did time that perfectly with the Hunter Hood. So at this point, I still had my Cleric Robe. I had to use it, and I wanted to create some separation over here. Now, at this point, I know I can win, and I know there's a high chance for me to win because I still have 1 defensive. I pretty much knew that he would be using some sort of like big damage, and one of his big damages was the E of Badon. Now, I wasn't sure if I can kill him with just 1 Hunter Hood. So obviously, with that, with them just try to run over to you, you can use your Q ability to deal extra damage over here. And once I was able to hit that Q, he hit me with the Badon. As soon as I saw it, I popped Hunter Hood. And this is why I wanted to go back in. I actually wanted to go back in because I didn't know if it was enough to kill him. But hey, I got lucky there because I knew when to use my skills. I knew that I had to counter his E ability, and it's mostly about being accurate with your Q against other ranged opponents, because this guy has long enough range to hit me with his E. So if you're accurate with your Q, remember Q has a lot of damage, and you counter with your Cleric Robe and your Hunter Hood when they use their E. It can be a pretty easy match, but at the same time, it's kind of complicated. It possibly purge my Cleric Robe or Hunter Hood. That was such a weird fight. GG, sir. So this is DEATHGIVERS with tier 6 equivalent stuff. Is using Q2, which is the deadly swipe, which is like the mobility of the daggers. He was using Purge on his Fiend Cowl, but he decided to go Bop, which actually does not make a lot of sense to me. But pretty much this is the meta build for Deathgivers plus the Gigantify Potion against Fire Staffs. All right, here's the strategy. The biggest thing to note here is that he doesn't have any reflect. So it's pretty much just free damage city for Fire Staffs here. He doesn't have reflect, so that means I can pretty much like full cast, quick cast, or whatever I want to do with my Pyroblast. So here we go. All right, early engage. As you see here, I'm just going to quick cast my E. The reason why I quick cast my E is because I just want to get that initial damage in. As soon as he pops out of his E, because he used this E right away, I immediately use Fire Wave to create some separation. And this is actually perfect because he can't go around because we're in a corridor. He obviously uses his Gigantify Potion to get around or go through the firewall. In this case, since I don't have much space, I triggered my Cleric Robe to pretty much negate most of his damages here. Look at this movement. Look at actually this movement. This movement I've not seen in any other Fire Staff users. When you're going against melees and you have secured your Cleric Robe, just go. All right, look at that movement. I'm not running away from him. I'm just crisscrossing. If you notice, that's like my strategy, especially when I have my Cleric Robe. I'm just crisscrossing. Let me show you that again. I have my Cleric Robe here, which means I am not taking any damage. And you just go crisscross, crisscross. So that is me maintaining enough space so that I can actually be really accurate with my Qs, because my Qs deal a lot of damage. Even with him with the Gigantify Potion, I know the burning will last longer, and Q just does a lot of damage, especially like the 4th Q. All right, after that, I was just waiting for him to get that 2nd stack. After that 2nd stack, waiting for him to get the 3rd. Even before he gets the 3rd, I popped Hunterhood. Because as soon as they get 3rd stacks, or the 3rd stack on their Q, they will go EE. So this is going to prevent him from dealing too much damage. But since, look at that, he's already really low here because he doesn't have any defensives after the Gigantify Potion. That 4th Q, the Furious Flame, dealt literally 279 damage, right? 10% of his health gone with literally just 1 Q. Boom. Look at that. And I even had Hunterhood, so he's pretty much like dealing damage to himself. I already have my Q. The reason why I quick cast or initiated this, or started to engage with my E ability earlier, is so that after this, after my Hunterhood, I will have big damages. And that's it. It's very easy to go against daggers in Stalker Corrupted Dungeons using a Fire Staff. You just have to follow that. Make sure that you use your Fire effectively. And if it's the case where they don't have Reflect, you can just bully them with your Pyroblast. Alright, so that is it for the longest video I've ever created for Albion Online. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something. Actually, I hope you learned a lot from this video. If you have, again, any requests for specific builds that you are struggling with, make sure to leave them in the comment section below, or join us live on Twitch at BernStoneTV_Twitch so you can watch these explanations live and maybe ask your questions so I can answer them as quickly as possible. I will leave my Twitch link in the description below.